All right, welcome to the Weekly Akasha podcast. I'm your host, Jacob. With me, I have my friend Victoria. Say hello.
Hello. Hello.
That's about all you're getting for an intro today because I don't feel like doing an intro, and it's my podcast and I can do whatever I want. If you're watching this in the future, this was recorded on Monday, January 27th. It's about 1:17 p.m. Central Time. It's been a day already. It's been a week already, which I will start talking about here in a second. I just want to do, if you haven't watched my Origins episode, if you're not, haven't seen Victoria before, it's a very dear friend of mine slash surrogate sister that I met like
Mhm.
5 years ago now, which is actual like insanity, or 4 years ago. No, it would have been 2020.
No, 2020.
Yeah. So really like 4 and 3/4 years ago, probably.
Yeah.
Um, and she's been with me on this whole journey pretty much. And so she has committed to joining me on actual weekly episodes of a podcast with the name Weekly in it, which has been anything but weekly since I started it for at least the next 4 weeks, and then we'll see how it goes. We have no agenda, there is no plan. We are just going to do what we usually do when we get together, which is just chat about how insane 2025 is and whatever else comes up. So, to that point, I'm going to start off by talking about my day, which started at 3 a.m., which for a long time was pretty normal. My sleep has been severely disrupted over the last couple of years where I'm just kind of up at sometimes it's like midnight, sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 3. Very rare occasions I sleep in till like 5:30 or 6 maybe, and I'm usually a pumpkin by like 9 o'clock and asleep. However, recently, really within the last month, and I was just telling my wife this the other day, things have like really stabilized and I'm pretty much up at the same time every day, like 4:30 and 5, and I can I've stayed up till 10 or 10:30 and it's been totally fine. Like a somewhat normal human being adult can do. Although there's been plenty of times I've been in bed at like 8:30 or something like that. But things have been very, very consistent. I haven't had those random nights where I've been up at 1:30 and can't get back to sleep or whatever until today when I was up at 3, and not just kind of like, oh, I'm like my dog scratching in his kennel woke me up. It was like I literally woke up and I'm just like wide awake. And the first thing I noticed was that my ears were just ringing like crazy, which I know it's not like I stood next to a speaker at a concert ear ringing. It is different than that. It's usually, which indicates to me there's like energetic stuff going on, and it certainly felt energetic. Like I felt hot, felt it like in my face and my hands. And I'm laying there for maybe like 15 minutes, and I'm just trying to like check in with myself and be like, what's going on? What do you need, body? Am I gonna ever possibly get back to sleep? And when I'm up at this time, the struggle for me has always been like my brain just goes into fucking hyperactive
Mhm.
mode and literally just starts spewing stuff out. So I have to like try to parse through all that. And eventually what I landed on is I just need to get out of bed and move around a little bit and um, have some green tea. So I came downstairs, fired up the Xbox, played a game of football, had my green tea, and by the time I was done, I was like, okay, yeah, like I gotta go like lay down. Like my
Mhm.
body's like, yep, time to go back to sleep. And I'm like, all
Mhm.
right, well, I'm probably not gonna go to the gym today if it's like 4:30ish and I'm like going back to sleep. Like I will almost assuredly sleep until like at least 7 or something. And there was I should pull it up because I know you're gonna be specifically curious about what this was titled, but there was a meditation by this guy, Steve Nobel, whose videos I've been like meditation and affirmation videos I've been watching for like really listening to for years now because they're very powerful and I pretty much just listen to the beginning and then I fall asleep. So there'd been one that came out 5 days ago that was in my YouTube watch later playlist. And as I was like headed upstairs and drinking water and going to go lay on the couch, I just kept like basically an image of this podcast kept popping like into my brain.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, it seems like I should watch this or listen to this. It's called Transforming Cosmic Control and Manipulation Transmission.
Interesting.
Okay, it's actually got a short description, so I might just read this. In this transmission, we
Yeah.
call on your higher self and body consciousness to create a landscape that represents the issue of control and manipulation in your life. We call a guide to meet you and lead you into the landscape. Somewhere in the landscape, you meet a dark figure that may remind you of someone or a few people holding this energy of control and manipulation. We call on some angels of violet and ultraviolet light to help you. You reflect this stuff, release it, let it go, blah, yada, yada, yada. Anyways, like usual,
Wow.
after like the opening thing where he always like bring in like your guides and your angels and you do like this grounding thing and whatever, I fell asleep. And this one's pretty short. It's only like 40 minutes.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm fascinated because when I do these, it's always like super interesting to me, like the periods, like I'll fall asleep and then I'll wake up at like very important times. Like I woke up during this one at some point when he was like in the description when he's talking about, oh, you're gonna see like a landscape. I like woke up and I saw the landscape and it was like in Gladiator when he thinks he's gonna die and he crosses over and it's like the Elysian fields or whatever, and it's like
Oh yeah. Hmm.
the light and whatever. It was basically like that. And then I fell back asleep again, like right after that. And then I woke up again at some point and they were talking about something else that I don't remember now. And then I fell asleep again. And it was like the other day I was listening to one and I fell asleep and I woke up at the point where it was like, and now, like in your hands, you see symbols of light that represent healing. And so, like, I saw that and then I fell asleep again. So it's always like super interesting how these things
Interesting.
work. Anyway, all that's just to say that, like, I don't remember anything about the actual transmission or anything that happened. What I
Hmm.
do know is I fell asleep. I woke up when it was over. I turned on this random, just like rain ambiance playlist that I have,
Hmm.
cranked it up, fell back asleep, and that was when I had like the craziest, wildest set of dreams. I don't remember hardly any of the details now, but like one of my brothers and my sister-in-law were here, but like our house was flooding, and I told you last week how we had the thing with our dishwasher and there was like water in the basement and like all this stuff.
Right.
It was like that, except it was like all over the house, like the garage and like our dining room and like other places. And
Interesting. Interesting. So what was the feeling? Like what were the feelings you were having with it? Do you remember? Like what
oh,
did it
I
feel
was
like?
just like running around, just like, what the fuck is happening? What is this? Where is this water coming from? And I was like yelling for Heidi, but then like my my one brother and my sister-in-law were there and they were just kind of like there, like nothing was happening. And
Uh-huh.
then there was like two other
Oh,
dreams that I
interesting.
had that were just as crazy and just as wild that I don't remember any of the details of.
Hmm.
And then I finally woke up like around 7 because my dog came down. Um,
Hmm.
and he just kind of like nosed me and was like, "Hey, it's time to get up." So
What did what
that
did
was how
you
my day started.
it's so that's so interesting. What so okay, my question is, how did you feel after you woke up that time? Like as you after you dreamed, after you had all those dreams, how did you feel? Or like what was the sense you had
I mean, I was just
after
totally
that?
out of it. I was just totally out of it.
To like not clarity, like not like waking up and you feel energized and
No,
awake
no,
and
no,
clear.
no. Whatever the
Hmm.
opposite of that is.
Mm. Do you because I'm just curious because it's interesting because I that what stands out to me is like that energy of control and manipulation being cleared, and then you having the dream about this thing that you had zero control over, and that
Yes.
there were people around who could have been helping but weren't. And that's interesting. So I was just curious if there was like a feeling that you had that you could pinpoint to like what is your subconscious carrying around that narrative, you know what I mean? Because like I interestingly enough, that's those conversations that I told you about before we started this episode. They were about control and manipulation. Like that's what I realized inside myself. Like this is about rewiring places where I have given away my power and let someone else control something about my decisions, my life, whatever it is. Um, and so that's really interesting that that was happening for you this morning as well.
Well, and that was like the first of the three dreams, and I don't remember anything about the other two. So
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
I just remember waking up after each
Interesting.
one and being like, "What in the fuck?" And then going, and then just like going back to sleep.
Hmm. I think it's fascinating.
I mean, it's fascinating that you bring that up because the challenge for me has always been I just try to control the outcome as much as possible.
Hmm. Of anything or specific things,
I mean, just
whatever you're doing.
yeah,
Hmm.
it's just like especially like work related in my career before the
Hmm.
last couple of years or until the last couple of years, I should say, when it kind of just got just had to let go
Hmm.
because I wasn't given much of a choice. I mean, I had choices along the way and just ignored them is probably the way to
Hmm.
look at it. But I would just decide like, oh, this is the kind of job that I want to have, or this is the amount of money that I want to make, or this is the
Hmm.
technology that I want to do, and just then I would just decide to do it,
Hmm.
and I would just do whatever it took to do it, and ignoring everything else, and
Hmm.
that works really great until it doesn't.
Yep, pretty much.
Um, Certainly, there's a lot easier ways to uh, learn things, but it is what it is at this point. Um, it all worked out, but I'm so much better now about like I've got this whole thing going on with my house because our dishwasher flooded and we've got
Hmm.
flooring ripped up and we've got carpet in the basement, literally where I'm sitting because a leak was like directly over where this desk is uh
Hmm.
sitting, and like pretty much all of that is was out of
Yeah.
my control.
Hmm.
Um, once the water mitigation started and I found somebody to clear whatever the blockage was and they got everything dried
Hmm.
out, now it's just like we have a property restoration guy that came out and did an estimate, and the insurance guy's been here, and now it's just like they have to go back and forth and review everything and decide what they're going to pay, and then we get to go actually have some control of the situation, and we get to go pick out the new flooring and the new carpet, and then we have a bunch more stuff
Hmm.
that's out of our control in terms of what the schedule is, when they're going to show up, how long it's
Hmm.
going to take, and all of that stuff. So,
Hmm.
but like, I don't feel like I'm stressed about that at all because those these situations have just always worked out for me. Um, when I would try to control them, they would still
Hmm.
always work out. And like this is
Hmm.
gonna like I'm like 0% worried about this.
Hmm.
But yeah, it doesn't feel like any of that was an accident because today's been so unusual because like I woke up, had some coffee, didn't feel like it did anything, was still kind of out of it, made myself work for about an hour and a half, like hated every minute of it, which is weird because I've been really enjoying going to work like this last month and just
Hmm.
like
That's
doing
good.
stuff. Um, and like I didn't want to be here. I saw in Victoria, it was like 10 o'clock, 10:15 maybe. And I was just like, feel gross. I just feel gross. Like I feel like I need to
This
take a shit.
morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I need to take a shower. So I went and took a shower. And then like literally while I was in the shower, it was just like, one of these things I've experienced a million times by now where it's like just feel like I get hit by something and my body's like, bro, you gotta lay down like immediately. And
Mm-hmm.
I just went and laid down and just like straight passed out, slept for like another hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Uh Finally got off the couch like half an hour later, went outside, was like, oh man, it's so nice because it's like 40 degrees here and sunny in
Oh
Nebraska
wow,
today. And
that's warm.
they're not chemtrailing the shit out of the skies today, so we actually have sun. Um and
Mm-hmm.
like I feel awake now, but like there's so much stuff energetically happening. Like I can feel it in my legs. I feel it in like what my body temperature feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Just in my field, in my face, in my hands, in my legs, just
Mm-hmm.
like moving around and all this stuff. So that combined with everything else that's going on the planet today and some of the stuff that I shared with you before we started
Excuse me.
today
Mm-hmm.
is I personally have not had felt a day like today. Like there's been pockets of pockets of days for maybe an hour or two where I'm like, oh, this is
Mm-hmm.
kind of intense, but I haven't had a day like today for quite a while, I would say, because I really felt towards the end of last year and certainly for all of January,
Mm-hmm.
in spite of everything else that's happened, that a lot of things had like stabilized.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's still energetic things were happening, but it was like, it's just like, yep, here it is. I know how to deal with this. Everything's
Yeah.
okay. There wasn't any of these, oh my God, I got to go lay down for 2 hours, or I'm curled up on a ball
Mm-hmm.
on the couch for like 4 hours and I just want to like put a pillow over my face and whatever until today. But
Yeah.
I say that and it's also like 1 o'clock and I feel fine. Air
Yeah.
quotes, air quotes, fine. So
Right. It's so interesting because so when you say when you're talking about how things feel energetically, are you talking about for you specifically, or are you talking about what you're feeling collectively, or both? Because I've had almost the opposite experience over the last, and so it's interesting to me
I'm mostly talking about me.
personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Because
been
I,
a,
what,
this
go ahead.
morning, first thing when I woke up,
Uh,
and I was kind of like, when I say woke up, this is like around 7 or whatever.
mhm.
And it felt like, ugh, that's the energy moving yawn and not an I'm tired yawn. It felt like I was
My
picking up
nervous
on
system is
just,
adjusting.
it felt like I was picking up on like a lot of like collective rage and anger.
Mm. Wait, when you woke up, when you first woke up?
No, at like 7.
Okay. Okay.
And I was like so out of it. And I was kind of
Hmm.
like drinking my coffee and I was like, man, I feel like it felt like very heavy.
Mm.
Um, then there was, man, were those fires in California 2 weeks ago now?
No, it's been longer. Well, I mean, yes, 2 weeks ago, but when from the time they started, it's been longer.
Well, it must have been, we're just going to go with 2 Fridays ago, which would have been January 10th. Yeah, so that'd be about right.
Hmm.
That sounds right. I could look it up, but I'm not going to because the dates don't really matter.
Hmm.
But it was like that Friday, I let my dog out in the backyard and it was doing this thing where it's trying to snow, but it's failing. But it was like, it's like 9 o'clock at night, super dark, it's flurrying. It was so quiet.
Mm.
And I'm standing in the backyard and I'm like, wow, this is like so peaceful and so nice. And then I was like, you know what's wild? It's like 1,500 miles away, like whole
Mm.
cities are just burning to the ground.
Yeah. Mm.
And that was like a very profound seems a little extreme, but like I felt that like in
Yeah.
my soul. And I was like, man,
Yeah.
this life is like actually super wild
Hmm.
to think about
It's re-
how just 1,500 miles separate literally entirely different experiences
experiences.
that you can't even like compare to each other.
Yeah.
Um, and man, for a couple of days after that, I was just really feeling just all of the collective energy around that. Just
Mm.
like the sadness and the grief and the rage. And like there was a part of me that was like, how did we fuck up so bad as a species that
Mm.
these things are even like possible?
Mm.
Because it didn't have to be this way.
Yeah.
And like, yet here, here we are.
Yeah.
And then like by the end of that weekend, I was kind of like past that because I'm like, well, it doesn't really matter at this point. It only matters what we do going forward. So, because it
Yeah.
already happened, that ship's already sailed.
You
So,
mean it doesn't matter like the decisions that were made
yeah,
leading up to it because we have to go
I
forward,
mean,
yeah. But at the same time, like looking at like logistically, looking at the things that could have been done differently that would have created different circumstances. But yeah, it's interesting the process of that because you can't like bypass the emotional experience of it, but then you also can't stay stuck in it because that doesn't allow us to move forward. That's interesting that you had that experience. I mean, the word that came to mind was surreal. Like
yes,
that surreal moment of like being in this incredible peaceful landscape, and your direct experience was quite peaceful, but then also being aware of what was happening. And that sort of plugs into something that was coming up for me as you were explaining the dreams and stuff. It's like how interesting it is, like at any given moment there's so much happening anywhere, and then we're also in our own internal experience where there's so much happening, and anything we tune into externally is then interacting with whatever's happening on the inside of us, that creates this extraordinarily unique experience that's just um yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's fascinating to me the people who tap into the collective and want to do like predictive whatevers,
yeah,
and then because I always think about, okay, but like where are they internally that is sort of guiding what they're actually able to tap into, because at any given moment there's so much to tap into. Do you know what I'm saying? You know what where I'm going with this? And
yeah,
so I just think it's fascinating.
yeah. It's anybody that puts up a video or anything that's called predictions, I'm just
Mm-hmm.
immediately not interested in because I can't even tell you the number of days I've had recently where it's like, yeah, like I'm gonna like at the beginning of the day, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna do
Mm-hmm.
these things. These things are on my to-do list. This is what's on my
Mm-hmm.
calendar.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of the day, my day has gone completely different
Yeah.
for any number of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to get super frustrated with this because I like to have things planned out and mapped out and like
Control.
this is like this is like when I'm shut up. This is when I'm gonna like do things and like this is what my schedule is. And then that
Yeah.
means that like I can walk the dog at this time and I can go get groceries
Yeah.
at this time and whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's when I've asked spirit for, like why did this stuff happen? What keeps
Mm-hmm.
coming up over and over is just like things change so rapidly now.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it has nothing to do with you.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Like things are just shifting so rapidly. That's why anytime anybody says like predictions, this is what's going to happen, I'm like, dude,
Mm-hmm.
that may have been true for that very specific moment in time when you
Right.
did that.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I've noticed some of the people that I follow, they never use the word
Hmm.
predictions, but they do like,
Hmm.
these monthly like energy updates.
Hmm.
And they're leaning much more now towards these are the broad themes
Hmm.
for the month.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And they provide examples like this is one way it may
Hmm.
manifest, or this is like another way it may be manifest, or like if you're feeling specifically this way, this is what might be coming up for you. But they never say this is
This
what's
is
going to
what will.
happen, this is what it's going to feel like. Even like
Hmm.
these 2025 year update prediction things, like the themes are so broad
Mm.
compared to what I remember a couple of years ago when it seemed like they were much more specific, because we're just moving into this new era where there's way more light than there's ever been. People are way more aware of their own power than they've ever been, and things are just
Hmm.
changing so fast.
Hmm. Yeah. Things are changing fast. Well, and then what just popped into my head was, wouldn't it be true that I don't know, I'm not a quantum physics expert, but wouldn't it be true that even by just stating this is what will happen, and then you're like anticipating a thing, that then that information in and of itself is now going to change or potentially create more possibilities for things to be different. Like it could go that way, but now there's, because it's been, I don't know, because it's been given a form, isn't this a thing? Like now it's in a form, so it's restricted, but that also opens up a huge, like vast possibilities that may not have existed before that thing was like given a form. Does that make sense? This may not make any sense.
It makes sense to me. Whether or not it's going to make sense
Yeah.
to anybody else is,
Okay.
I mean, it's like the guide through policy, like I always talk about. Everything was first an idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Once it's an
It had to
idea, it can be
exist.
brought into form.
Right.
So
And then
when
it
people
feels,
talk about those, like it's literally why you have to be so careful,
yeah.
like very conscious of the words that, yes, thoughts are powerful in their own thing. So are emotions, so are feelings, so are beliefs. The words that
Mm-hmm.
comes out of our mouth are the powers of creation.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, like somebody says, "Oh, this is what I think is going to happen." And if enough people actually believe that it's a
Mm-hmm.
possibility, it can certainly be brought into manifestation in some way.
Mm-hmm. And wouldn't it also be true that if there are enough people who then disagree or want to like create resistance against a thing, now you've created, um you created a thing, and but maybe you've created all these other things too that are
Oh yeah.
offshoots of that creation. And that's sort of like, I see that as like energetically, to me that looks like the fractals, the like spiraling off of realities and timelines and whatever you want to call them. um it's just so interesting, and I feel like we just understand like the bare minimum of how, like we barely understand how any of it works.
Yep.
Hmm.
Agreed.
I think it's fascinating.
I mean, I can tell a cautionary tale of manifestation, of not knowing exactly how powerful you are and having to be careful. Yeah. Funny enough, this actually involves you. You'll
Oh
remember this.
really?
You'll remember this day.
Okay.
So, God, when would this have been? Let's see. COVID was 2020.
Mhm.
Let's just say like 2018. I had what the hell was it? This four-door Chevy Impala car.
Oh yeah. Okay. Hmm. I know the
Um,
story.
it was it was fine. It was like I bought that car. I was like, I don't need anything fancy. I don't care about
Mm-hmm.
my car. I had literally just gotten it paid off, like
Mm-hmm.
not even 2 months before. And I was like, this is perfect. I'm just going to drive this thing till the wheels fall off. Because again, like I don't, my car doesn't that like matter to me.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it gets me to where I need to go and I can like play music and the windows roll down and it has like air conditioning and heating, that's like good enough. Well, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't even 2 months later, uh, got into an accident where I got rear-ended literally like a quarter mile from my house. And because it was so old and the damage to the front and the back and it bent a bunch of stuff that ended up totaling my car.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a super, I mean, I've had a couple of concussions in my life. This was by far and away the worst. I mean, it like messed me up for months. But at some point I decided once all the insurance stuff got settled that I was just going to go buy a new car.
Mm-hmm.
Retrospect, don't ever go shopping for anything if you have a concussion.
Sounds
Um,
like wise advice.
I mean, seems obvious, but when you have
But
a
when you have a
concussion, like your
concussion,
brain's like not. And
not
my
thinking
like
clearly.
my wife was there and like she knew how messed up I was, but
Mm-hmm.
I was sure I was just being stubborn and ridiculous and
Mm. I
I
cannot
mean,
imagine that.
shut up. And um so I went and bought and I kind of said, I like Jeeps, whatever. I ended up with this just kind of regular plain Jane
Mm-hmm.
Jeep Cherokee. And again, it was fine. There was nothing wrong with it. But
Mm-hmm.
at some point, a couple of years later, I mean, this would have been 2018. COVID was March of 2020. We went out to Colorado in like November of 2020. It was like 2 weeks before Thanksgiving,
That's right. Yeah.
just to get out and
Wow,
do something
that's when
because
that
everything
was.
was still shut down. But
Uh-huh.
months before this, I had, I don't know what I'm sure it wasn't like a course or anything, but like it's
Mm-hmm.
like, write down specifically what you want and then you say it like in this format, which it
Mm-hmm.
ended up working. So I can't say that it was wrong, but I also can't say specifically what it was.
Uh-huh.
But I was like, I want a white Jeep Grand Cherokee and it needs to have a sunroof and it needs to have black tires and blah, 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 blah.
Uh-huh.
And of course, in my mind, I'm just thinking like maybe I'll like trade in my existing Jeep and buy it or whatever. But I also like wasn't that serious about it. Because I was like, my car's like totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with it. And I like forgot about it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then we went to Colorado and you and I were uh gonna meet. You were gonna drive up from Denver and meet us in Ward or wherever the hell it was
Mm-hmm.
at like that Blue Owl Cafe thing, which was
Mm-hmm.
hilarious because of the Magic and Miracles thing.
Right.
And we were driving, Heidi and I were driving into town. We
Mm-hmm.
were coming around, we were like way up in the mountains. Maybe not way up, but for us, it was like way up. I mean, the roads were,
Yeah. Yeah. You were on like hairpin turn mountain
yeah,
roads. Yeah.
yep. So it hadn't snowed or anything, or maybe it had snowed the night before, like a little bit. The weather was
I think
super
it
weird
did.
when we were there, but
Yeah.
like the sun had come out. Anything that had snowed had already like melted. It was like 10 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Come around this curve, come around this curve, and then there's like you go down like very short down, then there's like another like hairpin turn, and then up.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see from where I was, I'm like, that looks
Mm-hmm.
like that's ice.
Mm-hmm.
Having grown up in the Midwest, I know how to deal with these things. Slowed way down. We got all the way around the corner, totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then I still think there was like, and then so we get around and well, now we're in the shade and the mountain's like on the other side. So we're in this shaded area. And I
Mm-hmm.
think there must have been black ice or something there because
Mm-hmm.
now we're going up So of course I'm trying to like accelerate, and I think I hit this, and it basically shot us straight into the side of the mountain. And there's no guardrail on that side. It's
Right.
literally just the mountain. And so we hit it, tipped the Jeep over. Like we weren't going that fast, but we first went into the other lane and then came back. So we were very fortunate
Hmm.
somebody wasn't coming from like the other direction.
Hmm.
And it literally like slow rolled. I mean, I'm talking like we hit the thing and it was like it felt like it was like 10 seconds to like for the Jeep to
Roll the
just like
car.
fall over.
It's crazy.
We get out, people came, there's no cell reception. We had to go into town.
Hmm.
That was a long ass day.
That was a
Um,
long day.
you ended up driving me to get a rental car. Heidi had to stay with the tow
Yeah.
truck guys so they could tow it into town. And then her and I had to drive back up into the mountains in the fucking pitch black in the
Hmm.
snow and everything. And that's not anything that I ever want to do again. Anyway, Jeep
Yeah.
got totaled and uh ended up getting the Jeep I have now, which is literally exactly
What you wrote down.
what I asked for.
Yeah.
So
It's
the
so interesting how that works.
and I mean I didn't realize any of this at the time. It wasn't until way later
I
when I was
remember when you were like,
when I
dude,
was like, shit.
this, look at this. I created this Jeep. um, yeah, that's wild. I mean, it's funny how, which also is sort of like, I mean, I know you said that this was like a cautionary tale about manifestation, but also it sort of speaks to that we have these ideal scenarios in our minds about how we want, again, the control thing. We have ideas about how we want things to make their way to us, right? How we want things to show up. But we have no idea. We have no idea how how it works, what needs to move and shift and be orchestrated in order for something to come into our experience or not. And I feel like 9 times out of 10, we probably wouldn't necessarily consciously choose the way that things happen. And yet we look back and are like, holy shit, that's exactly that's exactly how it needed to be, or that's exactly how, not that you needed to get in a car accident, but you know what I mean? Like I couldn't
Oh,
have
I know exactly what you
orchestrated
mean
that with
because
my
my
brain.
my current
Yeah.
home situation is another one of those things.
Mm,
Because at the end of the year, at the end of last year, there was
mm-hmm,
some sort of planetary alignment with like Venus where it was like between like this alignment and the end of the year,
mm-hmm,
it's like a perfect time to just like make your wish list for like stuff about your home.
mm-hmm,
This wasn't like a I'm gonna manifest this thing. This was just like, hey, like what are all like the upgrades and things
mm-hmm.
I would like for my
Your wish
home?
list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like a wish list. It wasn't like the thing I
Mm-hmm.
did before the Jeep where it was like, this is specifically what I want. And then,
Yeah.
I did like some sort of manifestation decree or whatever, and then
Mm-hmm.
like threw the paper away and literally forgot about it. This is just like, hey, like you spend a lot of time at home. It's your home. Like, what are things you would like?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was wood floors and carpet and like a new smoker because like the door on mine just decided to like randomly fall off, which happened at the same time. And
Interesting.
we got this landscaping project we want to do in the backyard because the way our
Uh-huh.
house sits, part of our backyard is literally like eroding away. And just like stuff like that. It was literally just like 5 to 10 minutes stream of consciousness. What are all the things?
Yeah.
Well, and then our year kicked off basically with
A flood.
it wasn't a flood. It could have been
Okay.
way, way worse
Mm-hmm.
because the water didn't get into our kitchen cabinets and it didn't get
Oh,
out to
good.
our island in our kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
It just basically decided for whatever reason, which makes no, like a lot of the things about this don't make any sense
Mm-hmm.
to go like straight through. Well, the end
Mm-hmm.
result is going to be because of the way this stuff works in the rules with insurance being like when you have damage inside your home like this, Like they have to
Hmm.
make everything match. Well, when you're missing a bunch of
Oh,
flooring
from
in
the
the
way it
middle of your
was.
floor and you're missing a bunch of carpet in the middle of a big piece of carpet, you can't make that match. So it has to get
Right.
replaced.
Mm.
Brand new. So we are getting all new wood floors, all new carpet, all new, like the whole basement, which is like my office slash man cave, has to get repainted because of how they had to like cut out the ceiling to like dry everything out
Hmm.
and all that. And like where it like matches, they're like, yeah, it's going to be like white, but the white won't match the white that's been here like since it was painted like 10 years ago. So they're like, we have to
Hmm.
repaint all of it. So we're
Wow.
getting all of this for the low, low price of like $1,000 home deductible and a
Mm.
few days of things being moderately annoying.
Yeah. Inconvenience.
Like people coming in and out of the house, and
So
Like
interesting.
Theo's gonna have to go to doggy daycare, which will be good for him. And
Yeah.
we had humidifiers and fans in our house for like 2.5 days, which just about I would have had to go somewhere else if it would have been an additional day because the amount of noise
Really? Oh, the noise
just like I mean, you could hear these things on our street.
from outside.
Yes.
That's really loud.
Yes. Well, they
Oh,
have to.
were these like industrial to
Yes.
dry everything's out? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I was thinking for when you said fans, I just was picturing like a little, I
No,
don't
no,
know,
no, no,
summertime fan. Okay,
no.
got it.
And we had like humidifiers
Yeah.
running, and then like we had plastic up in our house to try to keep everything like contained so it
Hmm.
could dry out. And thankfully it was literally only like 48 hours.
Hmm.
But dude, it it
I bet
almost
that was
broke
a
it
pain.
almost broke me.
Yeah.
So anyways, all that's to say,
Hmm.
uh what did my one of my friends say? I was telling her this story and she was like, it was something like spirit's ability to give us what we want and what we ask for,
Yeah,
uh in ways that are unexpected, never ceases to amaze me, or something like that.
totally.
And I'm like, yep.
I agree. And also in a way where it will inevitably bring up the stuff that will give you like the lessons too. Like,
Yes.
so I was like, here, you can have what you want, but you also have to confront these things.
Yes. It's just the classic
uh,
example of like you think you know what you want as a human being,
yeah,
and you do on a certain level, but your soul's like, actually, what you need is this.
what you
So
need is this.
here's what you need, and then we're gonna give you this gift
Yeah,
on the other
it's like a
side.
gift with purchase. Yeah. Yeah, you can have what you want, but you also have to take what you need. Yeah, I feel like that's been my whole last year, like having the amazing circumstances to get to rest in the mountains, and yet it's been so extraordinarily confronting, like on so many levels. And also, like one of those things where it's like, I thought I already did this. I thought I already cleaned this up. And actually, there's all these other extra things. I've been having these dreams. I don't know how this is relevant, but it just popped into my head. I've been having these dreams where I'm like with these people that are familiar, but not specific from my life. And last night I was having one where they were coaching me towards going somewhere so that I could see something that was going to be very confronting for me. And they get, and you know how dreams are, where it's like nothing's familiar, yet everything's familiar. And anyway, long story short, they were preparing me to go look at something that I was very afraid to see. But it was like, hi, they were like hyping me up and they were giving me all these tools to do it. And then of course, and there was like all this build of anticipation. They even gave me They gave me a mask. I don't know why this is relevant, but it's one of the specific things I remember. They gave me a mask to wear so that I would feel safe. But the mask was like a paper napkin that had had eye holes and a mouth hole cut out of it. And it was like, it made perfect sense in the dream. It was one of those things. But then as soon as they were like, okay, you're ready to go. And I was like, ready to turn the corner and walk into this place or like enter into this place where I was going to see the thing that was going to be really confronting. I woke up and and then I had the day
Hmm.
where like I had those conversations and I was like what is happening right now, because this could either spin me out into a complete collapse in my nervous system and bring up tons of fear, or I could stay oriented towards that initial feeling that I woke up with, which was pretty happy and like at ease and calm in my body. And so that was really interesting.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah. That's not the first one. I've started having dreams like that. I had this other dream where I was walking through this maze, like in a deep, deep underground tunnel. And again, it was like these people were with me that were familiar, but not, I don't know them in my day to day, like awake life. And I was being prepared. Again, I was going to eventually walk into a room that was going to contain within it like a deep, deep fear. And I was prepared. And I was like having this whole coaching session with them around like, just look right at it and it will be fine. Because that's what you do when there's fear. You just look right at it. And anyway, this one's a little darker. And I walked into the room and it was full of dogs. It was full of dogs that were like emaciated and starving. And I was so the response I had was interesting because I was like surprised because I was like, wait, I'm not afraid. This is not scary. This is not what I thought it was going to be at all. And yet also I'm very concerned about what is happening in here. And like, why would I be shown this? Why is this what it is? And then so I woke up and it stayed with me and I was confused about it for a while. And then within 24 hours, I had a conversation with somebody about a diagnosis that their dog had received and that could potentially be life threatening. And so, anyway, to like the dog is fine. But like, I thought that that was so interesting. And so, anyway, talking about predictive things, um, I wonder sometimes if our subconscious mind is tapped into more information than what our conscious mind is aware of. And then things like that sort of give us a glimpse if we're paying attention. But also, I had no idea what any of that meant as it was happening. I couldn't have predicted what it meant. And I could have made meaning out of it, but it probably would have been wrong.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And so, anyway,
Yeah.
it's just interesting.
Dreams are actually talking about things we know nothing about. We know nothing
Mm-hmm.
about dreams.
Right. We know nothing about what they are,
We think we
which is,
know, we think
yeah,
we have ideas, we think we know like what's happening. I don't think we really have any idea
I don't
what's
either.
happening. What's all we know for sure is there is some aspect of us that is
Yeah.
doing something else, and we somehow have the ability to remember,
Yeah. It's fascinating. And
which makes
also the
no
fact,
sense because you've never heard anybody being like, "Oh, I was daydreaming and I had this." Nobody daydreams and feels like they're flying, right? That only
right,
happens when you're actually dreaming.
right. Right. Daydreaming is a different, I think it's I think it's also a different brainwave. I think it's a different
Yeah,
set of brainwaves.
I feel like daydreaming is more it's more creative and it's more like relaxed. Whereas dreams are like a whole other like
Yeah.
there's something about that where it's like we literally have access to infinity and it's like
Hmm.
what do we want to do? But then we don't remember
Hmm.
we remember hardly any of it.
Yeah.
So it's like why do we remember what we remember and like why is
Mm,
Everybody's experience is so different.
yeah. And why, what would be the purpose that it serves to remember? Like what,
Right.
you know what I mean? There's a really interesting book that I've started reading called Why We Sleep. And it's most of it's physiological, like sleep study stuff, but some of it's about dreams and the purpose that dreams serve. And um, I guess from a science perspective, when our brain is in that dream state, um, the areas of our brain that are lit up, and I'm like totally, I could be way oversimplifying this, but what they understand is the areas of the brain that are lit up have a lot to do with emotional processing. And so the theory is that part of the purpose that dreaming serves is to help our mind body system process things that would be too much, like all the nuance from our days and all of our experiences, because we're taking in so much information to such a like minute degree that our brain filters out during the day, so it's not something our conscious mind has to process. So the dreams sort of serve this purpose to help our system process it, so it doesn't become this like static that we're carrying around all the time. It's like a way of releasing.
Mm.
And that totally resonates. um and I remember a coach of mine that I was working with last year, because I was, part of my story I'll share is I don't think I told you about this. I had gotten very, so leading up to the beginning of last year, things, and this is
Last
part
year
of
being 2024.
so no, thank you. No, leading up to 2024. So leading up to 2024, when I had sort of gone, I mean, I guess I sort of, when was it that we sort of weren't communicating as much? Anyway, I was like getting into this mode of increased stress, and my resilience was like in the gutter, in the toilet. Like I had zero. It was like I had lost my capacity to function in life. And I was smoking a lot of weed. Did I tell you any of this?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I feel like it was
Um,
like this was like after or during like the summer of 2023.
yes. Yeah, and it got real bad. It got to the point, and I wasn't really sharing the extent of how bad it got. But I was smoking every day, and it got to the point where I would wake up in the morning and I would be like, well, I can't deal with this. And so, long story short, I had started working with a coach, and he started giving me all this physiological information on what marijuana does to the brain and all the research. And I know there's conflicting research, but point is, one of the things that he helped me understand, because we had talked about, I'm a super sensitive nervous system, all of those things, and that if the thing that sleep does, part of what sleep does is give our subconscious mind an opportunity to process our emotional experiences. And then all day during my days, I was basically blunting my capacity to feel what I needed to feel.
It's a nice
And
play on
then,
words there.
right. um, and then also using marijuana to go to sleep, which I learned that our bot, just like alcohol or like any substance really, even if your bot, there's a terminology. What is it? Sedation is not the same thing as rest. So
Mhm.
even if you're sedated and you're asleep, quote unquote, your body's not actually resting. Your body's not recharging the way it needs to and repairing cells and all that. And so I was essentially sleep deprived, because I was falling asleep after smoking and not dreaming. So I basically wasn't processing anything. So what was my point? I had a point in sharing all of that. Oh, so I was like, I had just become severely depleted in having processed anything. And I thought it was really interesting that my takeaway from something that he shared was that for sensitive people, we have this built-in mechanism in our mind body when we sleep that actually helps our body metabolize the energy that we take in during the day. But we have to give our body the opportunity to do that by not interfering with our sleep. And I was like not doing that at all. That's the personal aspect of it. But I just thought that was really interesting that we're actually designed, we're evolved, whatever word you want to use. We're designed and evolved with like all the tools we need. Like our mind body system, our organism is complete in and of itself if we allow it to have what it needs to function properly. And I can't remember why that was relevant to something that you had said.
I don't know either.
I can't remember. Anyway, I just think it's fascinating. Um, I just think it's fascinating that we can get caught up into all these extra, I need to do this and I need to do this and I need to add this. And I need to interfere in this way, coming back to control again, like wanting to have control, whereas our body will actually take care of it if we give
Dude,
it.
being a human is so weird. I swear.
Yeah.
Because I saw this clip on Instagram from Dr. Peter Attia the other day.
Mm-hmm.
He's done a bunch of research into longevity and health and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he's talking about how he was talking about how what was his quote? We've gotten really good about majoring in minors and minoring in majors. And he went on to talk about what that means for him is
Mm-hmm.
the two, really the only two things you need to do to have a long and healthy life
Mm-hmm.
are consistent physical activity and nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just do those two things,
Mm-hmm.
that's 90+% of what your body needs because your body will take care of the rest.
Yeah.
You will sleep
Mm-hmm.
better. You will feel better. When you sleep better, when you feel better, you handle all the emotional situations better, et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera, et cetera. You do more things that you love to do, yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, but what we instead gravitate to, and he's saying like he's done these things too, is it's just easier and a lot more gratifying to be like, I'll take this supplement to help me sleep. I'll do
Yeah.
this thing to help me work out.
Mm-hmm.
I'll set these goals. I'll take this program. I'll reprogram my brain. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you can do all of that, and all of that has benefit,
Mm-hmm.
but you're really just majoring in the minors. And if you just instead put that energy towards doing things that in the short term are less gratifying and not blow them out of proportion
Mm-hmm.
and like not get to the point where like uh you hate your life because you're like, I decided I'm going to the gym 6 days a week no matter what, even when your body's telling you, how about you don't go to the gym and why don't you just walk around the block like 5 times instead?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You're way better off. So
Yeah. Well, it's we get so
it's like, oh yeah, I'm
I
taking
mean,
this green powder, I'm getting my probiotics. And it's like,
right.
cool, but you had like 10 minutes of physical activity the whole day.
Well, it's so nuanced because like he's not wrong, but it also, so then like speaking from the boots on the ground human perspective with all the stress that we live with and all the patterns of thinking in our mind, like it also can feel like it's oversimplified to say, well, just do this, when it's like, but actually that does require unraveling of certain patterns and habits and things that our system might be used to coping with, like the coping strategies we have to deal with the stress. And um like what I shared with the patterns with marijuana, like of course just stop smoking and a lot of things will change. And yet I had to be, and I did, by the way. I don't know, I don't remember if I told you this. So a year ago actually almost exactly a year ago in a month. The beginning of January in 24, I was like, it's done. I also got COVID. I also got super sick. You remember that? I was sick for like a month
I
solid.
feel like I remember that.
Yeah, my body, I mean, and my body was basically like, we're done. Like, we're done. We're done with all of that. We're done with all of this. The
Oh
stress
no,
needs to
I
change,
do
the
remember that
patterns.
because I remember being
Yeah.
super annoyed that you bothered to get a COVID test.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it was the shit that was happening, part of my language. I was running through all of the wildest symptoms, the symptoms where you're like, no, like, this can't possibly be part of what this virus does. It was the wild, it's like, anyway, that's a different conversation. So, uh, yeah, like, but I needed to get to a place inside myself where it wasn't, it almost wasn't possible to keep using the same coping strategies that I had been relying on. Like there had to be such an interruption that took place. I don't know if that makes sense. In order to have the desire to change, because I had become so complacent and depressed, basically. And and yeah, and so anyway, I guess the point I was making is it's so simple, and yet also it can feel so complicated to unravel ourselves, to be able to just let our bodies take care of what they need to take care of. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
I mean, you know,
I am.
the coping
Mhm.
strategies can be a real thing that have to be navigated. Not to like create this story of struggle and suffering, but it's like, yeah, sometimes it's more complex than just,
I mean, there's 8 billion of us on the planet right now, so
mm-hmm,
everything is magnified and more complicated than it really than it really needs to be. Because sure, it's like, oh, I have this pattern, or I have this belief system that's being
mm-hmm,
challenged, or this thing that I used to do that worked for me isn't working for me anymore. Why? And it's
mm-hmm,
like, sure, if you could just exist only in your bubble,
mm-hmm,
that would be one thing. But then you're interacting with other humans who are constantly reflecting things back to you. And you have to deal
mm-hmm,
with, like, I have a body that needs to eat and I need to sleep. And like, I want to
right,
play sports and be outside and climb a mountain and have a pet and have a spouse and
mm-hmm,
like any of another trillion things that are involved being human. All
mm-hmm,
those things of which, if you don't address the thing that's being brought up in front of your face, are just going to continue to bring the thing up in front of your face in as many varied and wild ways as you can possibly imagine until you have
mm-hmm,
absolutely no choice for the sake of your own sanity to confront it.
mm-hmm, right. And isn't it so funny that if we just were able to look at it the first time it comes around, like without like it wouldn't be such a big deal. Like that, I think that that's one of the
No,
biggest
because it
lessons.
seems like they need to come back, like you were talking about. Like there was certainly at the end of last year,
Uh-huh.
in regards to a lot of things, those last couple of months
Mm-hmm.
that were coming up, and I was like, didn't I already deal with this? Thought I already
Mm-hmm.
took care of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe we talked about this last week in the secret unrecorded episode nobody will ever see.
It only lives in the ethers.
Yeah. Just about how it's like when it came up the first time, it was like the review. And then the second time is like the
Mm.
test. And it's
Mm.
like, do you remember the lesson? Did you integrate
Right.
the lesson?
Yep.
Do you actually agree with it? And it's like a yes or no. You don't get like a grade on a sliding scale. It's like either you did or you didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but and
And
it will keep coming up over and over again until whatever it
mhm,
is has finally been transmuted or transformed or changed or released or
mhm,
let go or whatever.
mhm. And it feels like from what I've experienced, and this has really been like what last year was about for me, was the key to whatever it is that needs to happen, whether it needs to be whatever it is that needs to be happen, that needs to be happen, that needs to happen, if it's releasing something or taking an action or letting, or like seeing a belief system or whatever it is, the key to it seems to be to just, like I said before, with the fear, like just let yourself look right at it. Like just be completely honest with exactly what's in front of you. And by what's in front of you, I mean not only what it is that's happening in your circumstances that's triggering what you're experiencing, but like what's actually happening on the inside of you. You know what I mean? Like, I'm feeling anger. Why am I feeling anger? Well, I'm telling myself that this thing in front of me is threatening me or upsetting me. Okay, well, why? Well, I'm telling myself the story that now, you know what I mean? Like really being so honest about what we have made the things that we are experiencing mean, like the meaning that we've given it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then once, it almost seems like there's this
Yeah,
very
because the emotion is
natural,
never the actual thing.
right? The emotion is the signal. I've come to think of it as like the emotion is the signal that's letting you know, pay attention to this. And and then it seems to be that we have this natural built-in, again, talking about this incredible human organism that we are, there's like this built-in mechanism that we have when we can look directly at the thing and be honest about what it is with ourselves. It's like it seems to just take it seems to just clear whatever needs to be cleared, or it transmutes, so to speak. It's like there's an alchemy that takes place that naturally is able to transform whatever that emotional energy is that feels like suffering into clarity or purpose or calm. Or do you know what I mean? Have you experienced that, where it's like you're in this emotional pattern, and the minute you actually acknowledge or are clear about what's really happening in that moment for you, it like transforms itself, the experience of it shifts. That's what I'm
100%.
trying to say. Yeah.
My brain wanted to interrupt you and I didn't, but I was going to say basically the exact same thing, which is in a lot of cases, the purpose of the emotion seems to be to bring into your awareness why you are feeling whatever it is that you're feeling. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not the emotion, it's just what is the actions and behaviors that are causing this. And by the way, this doesn't apply to just things like anger or rage or sadness or whatever. This also
Mm-hmm.
applies to like happiness. Like why am
Yeah.
I actually feeling happy about this?
Mm-hmm.
And you often it's the classic like three times. Okay, so why?
Mm-hmm.
And then whatever comes up, why? And then whatever
Mm-hmm.
comes up, why? And then you
Mm-hmm.
may be actually getting closer to the truth of
To
things.
what the core
But
of
it
it
is one of
is.
those things
Yeah.
where it's like as soon as you have like those aha moments,
Mm-hmm.
and when you do, there's oftentimes, in my experience, there's no judgment around it. It's just, oh,
Mm-hmm. Right.
this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can consciously choose how you want to do or not do anything
Yeah.
with that information.
That's how I experience too. That's how I experience it too. Is it's
Because then
the
you can make a
aha
choice
moment.
about is this is this actually who I am and who I want to be and how I want
Right.
to present myself to the world. And it's not a right or wrong thing. It's just, hey human, just so you
Mm-hmm.
know, this is actually what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can choose to decide what you want to do or not do about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it takes some time. I've noticed that for the really deep patterns and the really core stories, it takes, when it comes back around, like we've talked about. Oh my gosh, I lost my earbud. It takes time. Can you hear me?
You're good. I can hear
Okay.
you.
Okay, good. It can take time, like we have to do it again and again. to watch the pattern reveal itself. And oh, where now I forgot where I was going with that. It comes around again and again. Oh, that's right. Um, when it's something that feels like suffering, like I'm telling myself I'm suffering in some way. Um, and then I can see the patterns clearly. And really, I'm the one that's making the choices that are then creating the experiences of suffering. I've started asking myself, or like really honestly looking at what are the, and sitting with, that's a piece of it, honestly sitting with what are the consequences of these choices, like what's the actual impact that these choices are creating for me, and being able to sit with that, and be honest. Again, it's like another variation of honestly looking at that. It all of a sudden becomes not worth it, even if the pattern seemed to come from sort of a default of I'm protecting myself from something, or I'm seeking pleasure in some way, or I'm trying to find safety, whatever it is. It all of a sudden, once the like full weight of the consequence is felt, it almost becomes uninteresting to continue making those same choices. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. And not to say that then all of a sudden there's like a bolt of lightning and you suddenly know what to do differently, but it sort of feels like it gives you a different orientation of how to make choices, because now there's this awareness around why the old choices were being made.
Yeah, I heard somebody refer to that once as like the void,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, we'll just use the example of like some pattern of behavior
Mm-hmm.
that comes up, and it's clearly like, you need to deal with this. And so you figure out however it is that you want to deal with it, or you get to the root of it. I mean, there's an infinite number of ways that goes about. But then
Mm-hmm.
whenever you work through that, there's a period of time where not only is your body and energy field adjusting to that change,
Mm-hmm.
but you have the ability to be like, okay, what do I want to replace it with?
Mm-hmm.
And the universe very often does not just show up, because you are
Right.
given the opportunity to be like, oh, like this is what I want to replace it with instead. And you will get
Yeah.
an infinite number of things come up in your life that will allow
Mm-hmm.
you to figure that out for yourself.
Mm-hmm. And it's so, and that, like you were saying earlier, how we can notice and we do the same thing with emotions that feel good, like happiness. Um, you can track things like, okay, now the opportunity has come up for me to experience this thing that's new. Do I like it? And then you can sit with, like, well, what am I feeling about it? Do I feel happy? Well, what about this is triggering that happiness? You can sort of orient towards, I've heard it referred to as like orient. I mean, that's a dumb way to say that. It's orienting towards your values. And I think that a lot of times people, for me anyway, I always heard people talk about values and they were these abstract things. And I come to realize for myself, at least, my values specifically, seem to be sort of an intrinsic part of my makeup. But I was never paying attention to it because I was clouded with all of this stuff that I had absorbed from other people of like what I'm supposed to like and what I'm supposed to do, and check the boxes and then you'll get these rewards and blah blah blah, and so you're supposed to value XYZ. And I never paid attention to what actually genuinely triggered experiences of joy, bliss, happiness, ecstasy, whatever good feeling thing you want to say. And so as soon as I started actually paying attention to that, it gave me this understanding that I could orient at any given moment, I could orient towards that from like the genuine place inside of me instead of the this is what I'm supposed to do. Does that make sense? But
Mm-hmm.
that also comes with sitting directly with what's happening.
It's all about alignment at the end of the day.
Yeah. What are you aligned to?
And that will change over time. Well,
Mm-hmm.
the way it manifests might change over time. If it's actually aligned for you, I mean, you don't need to be told not to murder people.
True. True. Some people do need to be told not to murder people, but
The people who need to be told not to murder people, they're not, it's not going to matter.
yeah, they're not playing this game that we're talking about
Yeah.
anyway. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the alignment changes because we grow and we change, and something that we're
Yeah.
aligned to in one phase of our life is going to change because just like a 6 year old is going to turn 7 and then they're going to be focused on different things because they're not 6 anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but as adults, we're not going to decide that, you know what? Well, I mean, you could decide. It's pretty unlikely you're going to decide that, you know what? Honesty is no longer a value of mine and I'm just going to be a liar all the time.
I mean, you never like
You could
you
certainly have
never
that
know.
experience. People probably are. But I'm just
Who
saying
knows?
if your one of your values is honesty and that's what you're aligned with,
Mhm.
that will remain constant. But the way that manifests around you and the way you interact and experience with that out in the world is going to change. Like
Absolutely. Yeah.
what I've come to realize is like you will just continually uh be tested.
Mm,
Like the lessons don't ever stop. It is just in a like an
mm,
ascending spiral.
mhm.
And every time it's like, here's your test. And it's not a pass or fail. It's like a yes or no. And then you can choose how you want to interact and whatever. Um,
Mhm.
until we get to the point where we finally attain mastery and then we don't have to come back anymore.
If that is indeed how it works, because I have my questions recently. But yes, yeah, I've started hearing it as like until we're finished playing this game. Like there's so many games to play, and this is one of them. And we can decide to finish playing this game whenever we want. Who knows though? Who even knows?
Yeah. A planet of free will is becoming exhausting, I must say.
I think I would prefer though to have free will than to not,
You
with
ask me,
all
it
the suffering it might come with.
depends on the day. Yeah. I get it. Is that a
Hmm.
snake ring on your finger?
Yes, it is.
Do you know we're about to be in the year of the snake?
Is it?
Chinese New Year. We're moving from the year of the dragon into the year of the snake.
Interesting. So the
Pretty sure that
story
happens
of,
like Wednesday.
yeah, it's soon. Or is it in February?
When is
Is this February
Chinese
2nd?
Chinese New Year? Wednesday, January 29th.
29th. Okay. Yeah, Year of the Snake. This was a gift from a friend of mine who I was in a program with. And long story short, I guided her through a visualization and she was able to perceive she found a small golden snake living in part of her body was essentially where the visualization took her. And for her that was like a a gift to become aware of that energy. And so fast forward, long story short, she was giving me a toast at a dinner we were all having, and she gifted me the snake. I had no idea she was going to do that. And so it was synchronous. So there was 10 of us, and someone had written down all of our names on paper, and then put it in the center, and we randomly chose each other's names. And so she randomly got my name to toast, give me a toast. And she had this for me. And so she gifted it to me when she did that. There were so many synchronicities that happened on that trip. That was in Belize. Um, anyway, that's the story of this little snake, is the symbolism of that experience with her. It's very cool. I love things like that.
Mhm. I just found that interesting.
Did you find it interesting? Oh,
I
that I'm
did.
wearing a snake and we're
Yeah.
headed it. Yeah. 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 This year will be interesting. I think there's going to be a lot of shedding of the
I was gonna
old.
say, isn't the archetype of the snake all about shedding its
Yeah.
skin and uh what's that called? Like molting and then it just like regrows.
Yeah. Shedding the skin. And the visual I just got is the importance of the snake's whole body is on the ground. And part of the purpose of that they've evolved is because they can feel the subtle vibrations of what's happening on the ground around them in a certain um, radius or diameter around them. And there's the, I could say that that's the symbol of like being so grounded. Again, there's a theme, looking at what's right in front of you, like being aware of what's happening directly around you, and the groundedness that that gives you, and the capacity to see and to be aware with your senses.
And also snakes don't force the shedding of the skin, it just happens.
Right. It just happens.
That's
That's
got to be
true.
uncomfortable as hell, I would think, which also would go.
Really? I think it
It
would
seems
feel
like it would
so
be so
good.
itchy.
Really? I bet it is itchy. And then, because you have you ever seen an image?
Oh yeah.
They like, I think it would feel so good when it's actually like pulling off that layer. Oh my gosh. It seems like it would feel so good.
Okay. I think it's time to pull some cards.
Okay, that's what I feel too.
So I'm gonna go first.
Okay.
I may have to unblur my camera, which is fine. I actually meant to do that before I started.
Okay. I can't. It's purple,
Yeah,
blue,
it's not.
purple. It looks
Oh,
like
there.
is it a rose or a vortex?
So let me. It's weird. It still is kind of blurry.
It is a little blurry.
So this
Oh, this is
is
light language.
so this is the Jamie Price's light language. What did she call it? Cosmic Consciousness Ascension deck.
Mm,
So I am going to pull a card that contains the light language that serves the highest and greatest good of everybody who sees this.
okay.
Can you hear that? Can you hear the cards?
I could for a moment. Nope, I can't hear them.
That's crazy. It's like right underneath my mic.
Interesting. Then your mic's doing its job to filter out extra noise.
Mhm. And then I'll read what it says.
Okay.
Interesting. Very good message for 2025.
Ooh, talk about snake.
Well, that's also true. So you can't really
The
see it, but it says
shape of it.
unity.
Pleiades
Pleiades
expanding.
expanding.
Oh.
So it has like almost like four suits in a card deck where it's the Lyra cards are about awareness. The Sirius cards are about initiation. The Orion cards are about judgment, and then the Pleiades cards are all about expanding.
Mm.
So I will read. I'll put this up again. Is it actually better?
That's actually right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is hilarious. It does look like a snake. Like look at even like the top of it. How it has that
Mm-hmm.
little circle at the top.
Yep. That's funny.
Ugh. The word unity stems from one and has the same basis of the word unique. Unity honors unity. Unity honors individuality because diversity strengthens the whole of life. The separation of physicality is obvious, but as you begin to focus upon the unseen truth of connection, you begin building a new future without the wounding of separations. The Pleiadians learned that this connection heals the fears that keep control and suppression spreading. This begins with you honoring your uniqueness and yet holding compassion, strength, and hope for the whole. You have the power of forgiveness and the courage of vision that others are still learning to access. Your ability to see connection supports your thriving. This card is beckoning you to your empowered knowing that you are safe to express and connect. When you see that past the limited truth of separation, you embrace the expansive truth of wholeness, comprised of the beautiful diversity and sovereignty of life. Your power is knowing that you are not only unique, but infinitely valuable to the expansion of life on Earth. The light language is supporting your empowerment, so you easily embrace your uniqueness and talents, and the talents of others. It is helping you move past scarcity that keeps people feeling unsafe. And then it has like four little
Mm.
bullet points at the bottom. Love and honor your unique choices, perspectives, and form. Appreciate the diversity in the world, even those you disagree with are serving the evolution of love. Find a perspective of hope and hold that vision of improvement, and enjoy your talents and the talents of others as inspiring life.
Feels pretty relevant. Are
I
you gonna
can't get
put
over that it
the
looks like a snake now that you said that. That's crazy.
um
Talk about alignment.
alignment? That's for sure. Synchronicity. Are you gonna put the description in the underneath the
Probably.
recording? Okay. Just want to make sure people can know what to expect.
There'll be a YouTube does like a transcript thing on the side now. So if they,
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, I might, but
Okay.
as of
Just
right now, this is a low budget enterprise. So
got it.
most that
I
also
like it.
includes mostly time. So
Yeah. Well, yeah. Honor your time.
not that that would take a lot of time, but I'm just not committing one way or the other right now. We'll see how I feel tomorrow.
Yeah. Was there anything that stood out to you about that?
No, just the snake thing.
Snake thing. One thing that's jumped out at me was I heard a message around letting go of control. And that ties in beautifully with some of our conversation today.
Mm.
Um, the control being part of the fear when we're believing and aligned to fear narratives. Control wants to be present. We want to control things. Mm. All right, you want me to pull a card?
Yeah, what are we pulling from?
So I was feeling Kali.
Show the box.
Okay. Well, this is the box. Alana Fairchild, Kali's Oracle deck. What do you think? It
Feels like that energy is relevant for today, is what I will
feels
say.
like it's relevant. Yeah. Feels like it's relevant for today and for uh this year. Um okay. So I'm just gonna intend that the card I pull is of service and significant to anyone listening, no matter when they're listening. And that also contains a message for Jacob and I.
I don't need any more messages today. My inbox is full.
Okay. Okay, for our highest good. Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. Okay, this is the card. There was two sticky cards. So this is the first one.
Hmm.
Let me, and there's some of these descriptions are quite long.
I was about to ask you if this is one of those deck that has like 3-page descriptions.
Yeah, it's not quite 3 pages, but it kind of is. It kind of is. Let's oh yeah, this is sort of a long one, but I'll just read the beginning of it.
Please do.
So mantra Shakti. Her voice creates and dissolves universes. Her vibration within our souls creates our life path. You have the sacred power of voice. How shall you express it? To call for effective divine assistance in all ways. Do not allow negative thought or speech to undermine your inner spiritual connection. Claim your voice and your power to create. Listen for inner guidance and then set your course in motion. Though it may not yet be visible in your physical world, a new order is generating within the soul. In time, it shall manifest in transformed physical circumstances.
It's hilarious. It talks about the power of voice as we're recording a
I
podcast.
I know, and that literally one of the first things we talked about was you saying when we were talking about manifestation, you saying the
Oh,
power of
yeah.
our ability to speak what we want. Do you want me to read more of it?
No, I think that's appropriate.
I think that is too.
Also, as you
Um,
were describing that, like I felt all the energy like right in my throat.
hmm. This is this is so interesting given our conversation. Let me just read you this sentence. The message of this oracle is that you have the divine birthright to choose how to deal with negativity. You do not need to allow it to gain influence in your being. Allow others the choice to behave as they wish, with the respect that each path is unique, that we cannot know how another needs to learn and grow through their life journey. However, that is not an excuse to allow for negativity to infiltrate your being and undermine your spiritual relationship with yourself, the divine, and your spiritual path that can bring benefit to the world.
Amen.
Amen. Oh,
What was the other card?
okay. The other card, let's see. This feels like it's, well, let's see. Well, let's see what this other card has to say.
Oh, that's hilarious. It was cards 39 and 40.
Mm-hmm. And they were real. It was sort of one of those things where they fell out of the deck and energetically I was like, wait, is it both? It's so let's see what the message is. This deck surprises me often. Okay. So I don't know if I'm saying it right, but Moksha Kali. Hold it up again.
I would have
Moksha Kali.
pronounced it Moksha, but
Moksha.
that doesn't mean anything.
Someone
What
someone
do I
may
know?
correct us.
What do I know?
So Moksha Kali. So this being an emanation of Kali as an energy, her passionate desire for your liberation is unflagging, and so your relief shall come swiftly. She is speaking to you from within. She is the voice of reassurance. Can you hear her? Trust her. Soon you will see things in a better light. You are going to be liberated from the struggle you are currently experiencing. Be true to yourself and your life path, and you will attract the way forward as obstacles disappear. Do not turn away, for you are destined to overcome all opposition, bringing your sacred path to fruition. It feels relevant for this year, this coming year. And do not turn away.
Yep. Just got to keep going.
Yeah, keep going. Look directly at it.
Amen. I feel complete.
Yeah, I feel complete. Well, I felt like asking you if there's anything that you felt drawn towards saying or sharing, or anything that comes to you.
No, I feel complete.
Okay, I feel complete too.
I started the podcast with a yawn. I just ended it with a yawn.
Our job here is done.
Feel like people that don't know, when I do like Akashic records readings and that kind of stuff, I always know when it's time to start the session because I yawn.
Mhm.
That's like my body's way of saying like, okay, like the energy fields are like matched and in tune or whatever, and you're ready to go.
Uh-huh.
So
It's definitely a nervous system signal. We
yeah.
yawn when our nervous system is down regulating.
So all right. Well, this is great. If anybody's still watching, appreciate you for sticking around, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Yay, bye.